Hey everyone, Luke here, and welcome to this week's ThursDev. So, Kickstarter. It's a great concept. It gives a lot of developers the opportunity to get funding when they wouldn't otherwise have a snowball's chance in hell from a traditional publisher. And it's opened the door for some even more exciting things like the recent Fig, which actually allows people to invest in games. And who doesn't love a little ROI with their gaming? Anyway, I've backed a few projects in my day, ones that did well, ones that failed. It's been a very interesting ride, but I noticed from very early on when doing the whole Kickstarter roller coaster that there seems to be a lot of misconceptions about how much it really costs to make a video game. Now, I'm sure that even the average casual gamer has heard making games is expensive, so it's not like this is news to anybody. Honestly, I'm willing to bet that to most gamers, it's kind of irrelevant beyond the whole expensive line, because how much you as a developer did or did not spend on a game isn't going to change their mind about whether your game is worth $15 or $50. But then there's Kickstarter. It suddenly forces the backer to become invested in the actual cost of a project because they're funding it. Not that many will really put a lot of thought into whether the cost is realistic or not, as long as the developer has the pedigree to develop a game and a pie chart saying where they're going to put the money, but the savvy backer can learn to do some reasonably simple math that will tell them if the numbers being quoted to them are realistic or not. Why wouldn't a game developer be able to quote a realistic amount, though? I'm not going to pretend like I'm this amazing industry vet and production guru, but these kinds of things happen a lot. There are many reasons for this to happen, and not the least of which has been green developers or developers who have never been on the business side being unable to really quote the right amount. This, however, could be a problem of studios lowballing their budgets so that they can get enough funding to just barely scrape by, or even more worryingly, banking on getting overfunded while quoting low so they can make the game with the budget they actually need. But so often we see the phrase unanticipated circumstances or something of the like, which basically means we're running out of money because we didn't budget enough. I'm not here to criticize Kickstarter projects though, far from it. Especially in most recent years, Kickstarter has been trying really hard to push accountability and transparency on developers who collect money from the people that believe in their projects, and that's awesome. And I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of developers who turn to Kickstarter never plan on not finishing their games. They just don't realize that they aren't budgeting right, or something just went wrong. So I thought that today we'd spend a little time talking budgets. Crap, you must be thinking to yourself, Luke's gone off the deep end and now he's going to lecture us about money. This is going to be drier than burnt toast in the Mojave Desert. But you're wrong. This is a big deal and something that's actually really interesting to think about. So as long as your eyes don't glaze over the moment you start hearing about words like ManMonths and overhead, I think you could find something interesting in this topic. So hey, I got where I am today through the producer route. So it's a thing I like to think about, but I promise I'll try and keep it simple and not get too technical or businesslike. So anyway, there's this old management principle that was originally developed by people in England's automotive industry called QCD that's since been appropriated by software development and by association production of games. That's quality, cost, delivery, which basically says that a producer should be concerning themselves with these three things in order to do their job properly. Whether the game is good enough, whether it's under budget, and whether it's on time. That's their job. Of those, arguably, I'd say the latter two are really the most important things in a game project, but of course you want your game to be good as well. Being on time, though, and under budget, that's where you're going to find out if you have a game that's actually going to ship or not. And this is a major issue with games, of course, but I'll tell you why in a moment. So the C and D of QCD are these two massively important things when developing a project, unless you have unlimited money and unlimited time. So we need a way to measure these things, and that's where the buzzword of the day comes in. Strap in for this one, because we're going to need a special vocabulary for this, and this is one that people boo and hiss at. It's the ManMonth. I think it's funny really how much hate the concept of the man-month gets. It's such a producery term that people just wrinkle their noses the minute it comes out of the mouth of anyone who works primarily with Excel spreadsheets, because it attempts to quantify and value time in such an oversimplified way. But no matter what your feelings are on it, it is the most accurate indicator. Note I didn't say it's correct, just mostly accurate, of how much a project will ultimately cost to make, assuming a normal workday. Now there are some obvious costs like licensing middleware such as game engines like Unreal or Unity, though those are becoming an increasingly lower and lower barrier to entry, and physics engines like Havok. Those particular fixed costs are relatively easy to calculate and usually are paid up front or near the end of the development cycle. Those aren't a problem. It's the cost of people that's the real big tripping point, and what it comes down to is the old saying, time is money, and the man-month is the business world embodiment of that philosophy. Simply put, a man-month is the total cost of funding a full single month's work accomplishable by one person, not just their salary, but also equipment fees and operating costs. Since there are no materials to speak of in the development process, even more so now that we're living in an age of mostly digital distribution, all or at least most of your costs in a project goes into paying people in your studio to do the work, and making sure that they have the necessary infrastructure to do that work. Say you have a team of 8 people. The whole team works for a month, and in that month you had 8 man-months of work done. And appropriately, the project has cost as much as it costs to pay those people their salaries, license their software, pay for or rent their computer, pay for dev kits if they're working on a console, and so on. On top of that, it also represents a split of the cost of their office space, utilities, and other office-related costs and business expenses. Let's break it down even further. Imagine we have a full-time artist on a team of 10 that does 3D modeling. Firstly, we work out how much they're paid every month. Say we have a modest professional budget and they're being paid the industry average for a mid-range artist with 3 to 6 years experience, according to a recent salary census conducted by Gamasutra, of about $4,600 a month. Next, we add their equipment. Modeling software can last a long time, but you'll want to upgrade from time to time, and no matter what you do, these software suites usually sell to studios by yearly license instead of outright selling the software anyway. So we'll say we're budgeting for 3ds Max, which is $4,410 for a 3-year license. That's the cheapest version they have. And Adobe Creative Cloud is at about $70 a month for the All Apps business plan. We'll make an estimate of about $50 a month for the computer because why not, and finally toss in the cost of our studio space. We'll eyeball that at around $1,000 a month since it's easy to divide by our team of 10, and calculate all of that. Our artist now costs us just shy of $5,000 a month. Now let's say that our artist can create a beautiful character model with textures, normal maps, speculars, and all that fun stuff, and also rig it for animation in about 5 business days, including time for reworks and other QA. That means that it takes 40 man-hours to finish one character, or 1/4 of a man-month. These go typically in an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month. So one character costs us $1,250 in this case. This is basically the standard most software businesses use to calculate how much it costs to create a piece of software. Many studios opt to average the man-month costs of all members of a team to make calculations easier. Honestly, this is an internal number, so you can calculate it any way that you want to, but the more accurate the man-month cost is calculated at, the easier it'll be to make sure you don't end up with dust pouring out of your wallet before your project ends. So it never hurts to overquote yourself a little bit. Now, once you have this magic number, it becomes the basis for most of the game's total development cost. So if everyone on our team was averaged out to with a margin of about $6,000 ahead, believe me, a 20% buffer is not crazy at all and programmers make bank, so it's not an unrealistic averaging. Your project costs $60,000 a month to make, at 10 man-months per real month. Where I think a lot of people get confused by the terminology in this case is that when you hear month, you think time. And though time does factor into it, something that took a week for a team of 8 to do, for example, was actually 2 man-months of work. At the end of the day, a man-month is a unit of cost, not a unit of time, so keep that in mind. Yay, hopefully it's less confusing now. But wait! Remember when I said that managing the C&D of QCD are tough? Well, game development is not only expensive in general, but it also is subject to good old Murphy's Law. Stuff goes wrong, things are often a lot more difficult to accomplish than originally expected. You may start developing a game mechanic and spend a few weeks prototyping, only to find that it just plain sucks and needs a few days to redesign, and the prototyping work you just did needs to go right out the window. However much time you think something's going to take, just tack an additional 20% on to that. It's cynical, I know, but I think a lot of developers can back me up on this one. Now, ManMonth costs are only the tip of the proverbial iceberg, though. Making games is expensive in many ways. You need to promote your game for visibility. These numbers may be a lot less relevant now, but back when I was doing console games that were sold primarily on retail, one of my mentors told me that a good rule of thumb for promotion cost was $5 times the number of copies you wanted to and could reasonably expect to generate interest enough to sell. So to sell 100,000 copies of a game, you should pay $500,000 in marketing cost. This of course includes things like magazine ads, digital ads on gaming news outlets, the odd TV spot, YouTube ads. It all adds up, no pun intended. And hey, if you want to get a game into someone's hands, you also need to distribute. If you're going to go through anyone but your own personal website, that's 30% off the top, on average. If you're selling a physical product, suddenly you're out a ton of money because the cost of printing copies of the game to disc, printing manuals, paying a distributing partner who has the connections and logistics pipeline to get your game onto store shelves. Chances are in that case that you're also paying the licensor's cut since you pay to put a game on Xbox, PlayStation, Wii, or any of the handhelds. There are other costs, but I think you get the idea. It really behooves you to look at what the project creator already has lined up too. A publisher to handle the costs of marketing and distribution. Prior projects that will be bringing in additional revenue to supplement their funding. If they're somehow independently wealthy and can throw money at it without going bankrupt, though that one's kind of hard to find out. So back to Kickstarter. I pay attention to a lot of projects on Kickstarter, whether I personally back them or not only because I like to see what's currently going on in the world of crowdfunding, but it's interesting to me. I don't usually like math, but I'll calculate the hell out of a project's budget to see if it feels realistic or not. It's like a big puzzle. Some sound tiny, but when you do the math seem at least passably realistic, while some sound huge at first, but turn out to be amazingly conservative. Remember also that those numbers are wildly skewed towards North American numbers. I saw a project on Kickstarter today asking for only $50,000 to fund an 8-month dev cycle for 9 developers, with most of the above being non-existent. But the development team is based in Yakutsk, which is basically the frozen tundra of Russia, where the cost of living is much lower. So you have to factor all of that into ManMonth cost. And that's sort of a broad strokes breakdown of how to calculate what a game costs. For developers, especially indies who want to develop a game but aren't sure what kind of cost to consider up front, let this video be your pocket producer. And for gamers, yeah, I know you don't really care one way or another how much it really costs to make a game. It doesn't affect you. Or does it? I mean, this is how wildly successful studios still get shut down because of a single badly performing title. Of course, there are other factors there too, but a lot of game studios are living hand to mouth. It's something to at least consider when you're wondering why that one level looks suspiciously like that other level in the game before it in the series, or why so many buildings look the same, or why they seem to cut so many corners, why Dragon Age's 2 dungeons all looked so familiar. Which brings me to the announcement for next week's episode, where I talk about the reuse of assets, so look forward to that one. But until then, I wanted to say that, as always, I really appreciate your watching. It's a lot of fun making these episodes for you, and I learn a lot myself by doing the research I do for them. If you're the kind of watcher that presses big red subscribe buttons and also want to watch more videos like this, maybe I can compel you to do that right now. I'd really appreciate it. But not if it says unsubscribe, though. You can leave it alone in that case. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.